Hi, and welcome to According to Weeze, the podcast. With me, your girl Weeze. This is a show where we're going to have candid conversations with the hopes of finding a way forward in community. See, fundamentally, I believe that we exist at the intersection of our complex identities, politics, and our sociocultural systems. And let's be real, the only way to dismantle it all is to dissect it. So get cozy, get comfy, and let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of According to Weeze, the podcast. I'm so excited. I feel like I say this at the beginning of every episode. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. But that's because everybody that's been on the show so far is somebody that is actually my chosen family. So I'm just hyped because I get to sit around and record with people. Y'all, I told y'all when I recorded with Letty that I was going to have the full Trinity would make their appearance. And today we have the one and only, the amazing Myisha.
Hi, friends. What's up, good girl?
You know. Life.
Yeah.
Just lifing, like everybody else.
Living while fighting the systems.
Exactly. Just trying to make it out here one day at a time. You know what? We're not even gonna spend all the time being like, this is what Myisha does and who she is. Because if y'all don't know at this point, where have you been? Also, it'll be in the show notes, so you can read about it. You can read about it just in case. But we just gonna dive in because the people should.
Wait, I just want to do with BIWoC. So just Google me. Put my name in Google.
Oh yeah, just Google me. I wish people could see. Maybe one of these days I'll actually record these and put them on.
See our face and be like, wow.
Right? They'll be like, ooh, damn. And we're gonna talk about facial expressions shortly. But yeah. You know what? Google her. So, we're still gonna talk about the thing that we said we were gonna talk about, but we got to talk about this first. So I'm like, I don't know what day it is. 8th, 9th. Today's the 8th of October.
Yes.
And we're recording the day after the VP debate between Harris and Pence. And, a lot of people are talking about the fly landing on Pence's head and I got to give the Biden campaign their shout out for reacting very quickly and being with the times. Do you see the picture of him holding the fly swatter? And it was donate $5 so the whatever campaign can fly. I'm like, all right, I see y'all. And everyone is having that conversation. But the conversation that you and I really want to have is, I think, a far more important one, and one that folks are not having, which is, we know, by we, I mean you and I and every other Black and brown woman out here, knows just how much patience, self-control, restraint, and respect, as well as just social awareness, right? It took for Kamala Harris to only use facial expressions, to be as poised and polite and graceful as whiteness forces us to be, when we could be out here wilding out and be openly and justifiably frustrated, right? And yet she did what we are taught that we have to do in certain spaces, right?
Exactly.
Did her thing. Shout out to her. And the phrase that she used last night, which I think a lot of us have used before, is, I'm just like, this sums up to me the moment, the facial expression, the moment of it, of I'm still speaking.
I'm still speaking.
Now, I don't know about you, but literally the moment the debate ended, it was like meme.
Facial expression, fly, meme.
Right. I'm still speaking, fly, facial expressions, fly on shit drawn in, whatever.
The fly has its own Twitter account. How about that?
As an aside, everyone go to flywillvote.com if you need support around voting and ballots and so on and so forth, because the fly is here to help you. But I really want to have this conversation around not only the I'm still speaking, right? The impact of that, the need for that, and what that really represents and means, but also like what we're just going to call the aftermath, which we can get into in a second. So let's first dive into that piece, like the importance of the phrase, why it was even necessary, why she said it the way she said it, like all that good stuff. And I'm gonna kick it off to you.
Thank you, Fran. I mean, it's important. Hey, guys. Like, it is so important for brown and black and indigenous women to be able to name that I am in the room, right? So she names it at a time when, as usual, the patriarchy shows up. A white man feels fragile. He leans into his power in the room, and she has to look over to him and say, I'm still speaking, as if to remind him that you are not the only one with power in this space. It is a way that she showed up and honored her humanity as a woman, as a woman of color, as a woman of Jamaican and Southeast Asian descent. Like, I'm here, you're going to respect me, whether you like it or not. And it was the tone, right? It's the tone that we are used to having to take up, right? With our followers, with our other white men, just white folks, period. It's the tone of authority. Right. And that is that tone of authority that then we get the label of angry black woman or passive aggressive. She's a lioness. And like, I'm going to pause here because when you go to some of the tweets by the white women who have co-opted that now, we're going there. It's, she's just so dominating and she's so aggressive. And yes, sis.
First of all, y'all saw my tweet. Stop calling us sis. Sis is a very specific thing. It is a term of endearment. It is a term of community. It is a term of kinship amongst folks of color, expressly black women, because that's where it started. And when you show up in spaces and you don't have the lived experience to understand that kinship, and you just run around calling people sis, no.
That's a boundary that you don't need to cross.
You don't cross unless, and I will say this, I'm in community with white women. They are my chosen family because they have really showed that they are with the shit. They call me sis because that's really somebody I'd be like, no, that's like my sister.
Exactly.
Right? So just the same way you don't get to just assume the position of like accompliship, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm really an advocate and accomplice, or as Myisha says, a co-conspirator to folks of color. Like, you don't just get to decide that you cis. So also, please stop. I said this once. I tweeted it. I put it on IG. White women had a fucking field day. They dragged me for asking them to stop calling me sis. Like you would have swore that I talked about their mama and their firstborn child.
Exactly.
Y'all just gotta have everything.
The attack. You have to own it all.
But anyways, yes. Back to what you were talking about. The ways in which all of this languaging is now being
co-opted and taken and described. It's being applied to whiteness now because all the memes are, oh, she was speaking for all women because we all know. No, because all women don't uphold white supremacy. Actually, I'm saying that incorrectly. White women are known to uphold white women. So when you as a white woman say all women, you're actually just talking about white women. You're not talking about all women. Because if you were, you would understand the power dynamics that you use against black women in the workplace. So,
I mean, intersectionality, shout out Kimberly Crenshaw, would not be a thing.
Exactly. But you know what? We can also talk about how even intersectionality was co-opted.
Oh, listen.
Everything
that's a whole other
episode. Everything that we as black women, brown women, indigenous women create and do and use is co-opted.
Can't have nothing.
We can't have anything. We can't say anything. We can't do it. It just does not belong to us.
Right. And so the thing that I really want to hone in on here, is, like, because this is a really good first point, is the way in which language is even in just the language, right, is weaponizes whiteness, reinforces whiteness. Because even think about it, like, y'all think that what you're saying is like, she is strong or she is, resilient or whatever. What you're actually saying is the fact that she is in a space where her various marginalized identities require her to maintain a certain level of decorum and grace and poise that is not required of her privileged counterparts in order to simply exist and remind people that she exists is a strength, is resilience. That in and of itself is problematic, one. Two, the language that we use, right? Like I saw somebody say like, oh, she's such a savage. And I understand that like there's a colloquialism to that, right? Like, oh yeah, she is sav, like she's dope, she's whatever. But like when white people use it, especially, like it bothers me in general. But again, like thinking about the way that the terminology around like savage, barbaric, right? Like it is inherently dehumanizing. It has been used against indigenous folk, black folk, brown folk globally to reinforce white supremacist ideologies and dominance and superiority. So when you're out here calling people like, yeah, even like a lioness, like, why must you reduce her to an animal?
People only think that, well, I'm keeping it with pop culture and it's okay because, I heard, my other friends say that. And then that's not necessarily true. Think about the ways in which the words that you are speaking are oppressive and causing harm to someone else, specifically in communities in which we have been memified and commoditized into a deafening silence where you can be rich off of now putting on a shirt, I'm speaking, without giving attribution to Kamala Harris. There are going to be memes, bumper stickers, t-shirts. People are going to profit off of it. And they're going to center whiteness while they're profiting off of it. So we will see the really cute little, what are those pictures called? Stock photos of white women in office spaces with shirts on and red lipstick. I'm speaking.
I'm speaking. And if you don't believe us, Breonna Taylor, God rest her soul, is the perfect example of the ways in which Black experience, Black identity, Black life, Black language is absorbed by whiteness for the purpose of monetization and commodity, for the purpose of trend, for the purpose of positionality. So it's valued for the money.
Yep.
See slave industrial complex. It's valued for the money, but not the humanity, because she still does not have justice.
Right.
They didn't even intend to bring her justice. Daniel J. Cameron did not even her name wasn't even mentioned in the grand jury.
Was not.
Not once was that charge even brought. Her murder wasn't even a topic.
So there was even no intention to bring justice.
Exactly.
Y'all continue to monetize off of her face. You continue to use her name for political fights. I just want to say this. If you see something with her face on it, I need y'all to email her mother and say, does this support your family?
Exactly.
Because if not, you are putting money in the hands of someone who is profiting off of her death.
I mean, Hulu, that Hulu documentary.
With the New York Times.
New York Times. I've seen shirts that just have her name on it. I've seen, I've seen all sorts of things. We saw, who were those wild ass white folks? We're not even going to tell you their business name so they don't get any more attention, but that went and took pieces of material from protests and then made jewelry out of it and then named every single piece after a murdered Black person. And I'm like, y'all, there's a white artist who just yesterday released a song called I Can't Breathe. And the graphic that went with the song was her all dolled up, to be clear, in a shade foundation much darker than her natural shade, because I looked at her Instagram account, with black paint over her mouth. Like, why is it that as a society, we know why, this is rhetorical. Why is it that as a society, we have no problem extracting all that we possibly can out of Black, brown, indigenous folks, and specifically Black women, to line pockets, to increase views, to skyrocket, whatever, like visibility. But we can't even give Black women humanity in return. We can't even give Black women attribution, because what I have not seen, and this is why I haven't posted about it yet, what I have not seen is anyone say, I'm still speaking, quote unquote, like with the dash, Kamala Harris.
No. I just started seeing it, so I think folks starting to get. I saw a couple of
Okay.
them just within the last, I will say, 2 hours.
Oh, I
But
haven't been
before
on.
that, mm-mm. No, it's just the tweets when, yeah, girl, yes, sis, we all feel like this. We know how you feel. If you knew that's how we felt as a we, then that means that when you encounter another woman of color and power in the
Mhm.
workspace, you're going to make space and let her take the space, and you're going to step back. It means that when you see a white man speaking to a woman of color in a disrespectful manner, you're going to ask him to stop, pause, and reflect on what makes
Mhm.
him think it's appropriate for him to talk to her and you that way.
Right. Right. I mean, just think about the fact that she's not even allowed to make facial expressions without the world dragging her. But we have a dumpster fire of a human being as our current
Hmm.
sitting president who not only
Hmm.
makes facial expressions, hand gestures, outright tweets, quotes, and comments that are so disparaging and explicitly disrespectful versus just a facial expression because you don't agree with what the hell just came out of that white man's mouth across the
Mm.
floor.
Yeah. Or the tweets like, oh, she's so animated. Look at her. Look
Yeah,
at her. So I
right.
guess we are characters now. We're going back into blackface. So we're
Mhm.
performing. So y'all think it's a performance, but
Right,
that is the experience of
right.
black and brown and indigenous women.
Mhm.
That's not a performance. That's our posture of power.
Right, right. And imagine to know that you can't actually say anything in a moment, either because, oh, you're actually following the rules of the container, which is you don't actually talk when the other person's talking, because that's what
Hmm.
you're supposed to do. It's debate 101
Hmm.
for all my folks who took debate, right? So she knows she's being respectful. She's doing what she's supposed to do in that particular setting, following the guidelines and the rules. Clearly, she's thinking things and she's making facial expressions. She can't even be a human in that moment. She's
No,
doing everything right and still
it's
is
not
not
enough.
afforded her
It's
humanity.
not enough. Absolutely not. Because we're denied our humanity. We don't we
Regular
don't e-
business.
we don't have a humanity. Our
Mhm,
job is to perform,
mhm.
and so you can make profits.
Yeah.
Performing for profits. P squared.
Mhm, mhm. P squared. I love it. Y'all heard it here first. Don't steal that from her. Y'all know y'all like to steal shit.
Well, that's a whole how they. Mm, mm,
Speaking of attribution,
mm.
but I think that is something that people really need to grasp and understand, and also grasp and understand the magnitude of what we were watching.
Exactly.
Imagine knowing you're on national television and frankly international because the whole world is watching. uh, I don't even know
Yeah.
what to call what our country is right now. The hot ass mess that is our country. Like y'all, if y'all don't read international news, we're a joke to the whole world, and rightfully so. But you're on international. You've got international eyes on you. You're on a huge stage. You are a white man, right? Pence, white man, cis, het,
Yep.
Christian, right? He is the epicenter of privilege. Epicenter of privilege.
Yep. He.
In a space, what were you going to say? Because your face
Mm-mm.
just said a
Go
lot.
ahead.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All
Nope.
right.
Keep
Okay.
going.
You're like, nah, this is recorded. In a space where there are very clear rules to decorum, there are very clear guidelines. And he still could not find it in him, knowing the world was watching, knowing that there are guidelines of engagement, to provide even the most basic amount of respect for Kamala Harris. And
Yeah.
that's not just because, oh, that's how they debate. Like if it was Trump, I'd probably say, yeah, because that's just who he is
Who he
also
is as a person.
as a person, right? And granted,
Hmm.
that is still fundamentally a result of his social identities and his positionality in society.
Absolutely.
But with Pence, it's very, very important to name that because we have seen him in other settings know how to quote unquote follow the rules,
Yep.
know how to be respectful,
Yep.
know how to engage with decorum and right, like, and all the other things. And yeah, in the past, he'll go over his time or whatever. Like they all try to get their last words in. We gonna give him that. But what we saw explicitly was him enacting the power, the privilege, and the entitlement that he knew he possesses and that he's possessed his entire life, just in the way that he engaged with her, in the way that he reacted to her, the way that he spoke to her, the way that he spoke over her. It wasn't just like oh, you said something and I'm going to interrupt you. It was with a level of dominance and expectation of like, I'm talking now, I am the white man, and I expect you to sit down, shut up, and do as, like
as you're supposed to do. Be submissive.
Exactly. Be seen and not heard. Stay in your lane.
Exactly.
I'm talking now.
And that is the unsaid, unspoken expectation of every white man in a position of power around the world. It is a global phenomenon. It's nothing new.
And so, for me, when I'm seeing all these, I'm still speaking. Yes, sis. Woo! You're such a sav. Whatever.
Oh, they said sav. Lord have mercy.
Yes, right. Like when I'm seeing all of that, I'm like, y'all don't get it.
They don't, and I don't think they understand the implications. Like that's cultural appropriation.
Also,
just basically culturally appropriated. Like whether you like to admit it or not, it's cultural appropriation.
Right, and to be explicitly clear, the reason is because her need to state that in the way that she stated it, at the moment that she stated it, was specifically rooted in the power dynamics that were a result of their oppositional social identities.
Exactly. And she said it not just once, she said it twice. And the second time she said it was the way that we actually, with the smile. You see the face?
Yep.
Yeah. With that, I'm speaking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But you all would just see that as disrespectful.
Right.
Not as a woman owning her power in that space.
And not as a woman of color owning her power.
Yes.
Really, like to level that up, to be like, oh, that was you got me fucked up. Like, I'm gonna keep it cool because I understand
what we're doing here
to do this, right? But catch me outside.
How about that? Sorry, it just was there.
It was perfect timing. That was great. But so for me, this I think really also segues us into what we really wanted to talk about today. So y'all have heard me say the Great White Awakening.
Yes.
This is what I call it.
That's what it is.
It really is, right? In end of May, beginning of June, the white world woke up. And they were like, oh, this is what Black, brown, indigenous folks have been talking about for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Like racism, it's real. Yes, y'all, it is. So we saw the Great White Awakening. And hella folks have been talking about this, right? I've talked about it before. You've talked about it.
Letty, all of us talk about it.
All of us have talked about it, right? Letty, everybody. And now what we're starting to see is the Great White
Ghosting.
Yeah, it's the Great White Ghosting.
It's Halloween too.
Oh yeah. We're seeing like it's like Casper in full effect.
Yep.
Like y'all, and it's not so friendly of a ghost.
It's not.
Right. And so we've talked about it previously. I know both together and separately and publicly, and Letty's talked about it, Trudy talked about it, everyone's talked about it. How all of a sudden, in May and June, people were like riding. They were signing up for our educational containers. They were signing up for courses. They understood that all of the free education and labor that we provide on the internet is actually not free and is a gift to the world. And so they were Venmoing. And I will say, and I know you've had this, I've had this, like folks that'll Venmo, and they were like, it's only $2 because it's COVID and I don't have a lot of money, but I want to let you know that like I see you,
I appreciate you,
and like this is what I can do. That $2, the impact of that on an educator who has spent their entire life just as a human being ignored, erased, right, like so on and so forth.
Exactly.
That's needed to say, I'm still speaking. Just to know that like you've been seen, you're appreciated, and like that gesture, right? Like impact in that moment is so high, regardless of whether the dollar amount was.
Exactly.
And now, June, July, August, September, October, we're about 5.5, 6 months out.
Yep.
And it's like
when there would be like
Oh,
over 200 people in your classes. There's like
Mhm.
30, which is great because I love it small.
I
Small
do
is
too.
fun for
I
me
do too. I
because I
prefer it.
can interact and we can
Yeah.
laugh and talk and really get to
Yep.
know each other.
Yep.
Or you have the ones that, I signed up for this mastermind and, it's COVID-19. Can I get a full refund? And you're like,
Or, you know what? We just gonna name it. Or well, I signed up for this course and then I found out that in the past you used to do this, or you have a different program happening that looks like this. And I want to do that in that way. But even though it's 6 months instead of 3 months, and even though it's a mastermind instead of a course, and even though there's only 15 people in that, and that's the cap intentionally because it's a completely different learning experience,
mm-hmm,
and it's 6 times more expensive. I want to do that, but I want to do it at the same price. And I want you to give me what I want, how I want
I
it,
want it when I want
when
it.
I want it, at the price that I want it at. And then when
Exactly.
you say no and explain to me the price difference, I am then going to ask you explicit questions around how you
Yep.
work, what you do, how you coach, how you're going to hold the container, how you're going to show up for me. Basically, asking you to prove your worth and value as a human and an
Exactly.
educator before I even consider taking back the fact that I asked for a refund. And then once I've done all that, I'm still going to say, actually, can I have a refund? Y'all, also, I'm not making this up. I have all the receipts. This is
And
as,
then when you don't give the refund,
oh
you
my
go and do a PayPal dispute
girl.
or a Stripe dispute, not knowing that several people have made disputes
Yes,
for $5
yes.
of a subscription that all
No,
you have to
five.
do is go in and hit cancel. You
Right.
do a dispute for $5 and then not think about the ways that these electronic companies work. When you have too many disputes, they will shut your
Shut you
account
down.
down. So
Right.
you're not thinking about this. You're only thinking about
And you get hit with fees.
oh yeah,
So,
there's
like,
so many fees.
you want to dispute $5 because you forgot that your cancellation date was like the 5th of the month. And so you're really going to put in a dispute over $5 because you forgot when the cancellation date was. Or my favorite is when they email and they say, "Hey, I was supposed to cancel by the 5th. I forgot. Can you refund me the $5?"
Just go in and cancel for the next month. It's $5.
Also, you've got me fucked up. Like, are you going to go tell AT&T that? Are you going to tell AT&T, "Oh my god, like that's on me. It's my responsibility. I dropped the ball, but I expect you to incur the financial stress or the take the L." No, you wouldn't.
No, because in the
You
culture
wouldn't.
of whiteness, no pun intended, or the culture of I-ness, we
Mhm.
don't think about how this is going to impact the other receiver.
Right.
So
Right.
we only think about how it impacts us, not the other person. But
Right.
you have to remember, you are working with Black and Brown educators
Mhm.
who may not be six-figure earners. You don't
Right.
know if that that what you're doing with PayPal and Stripe is going to negatively impact someone's bank account to
Right.
feed their children or to feed their dogs or to pay their rent. We still have to pay rent. We still have
Right.
living expenses. We live on the West Coast. It's one of the most
Listen.
expensive cities in the country.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like the bigger picture of for you, you're being petty over $5 after you've already consumed all of the content and tried to pick our brains and tried to, like extract from us literally everything that you could, disrespected our containers, shared, because y'all think we don't all talk to each other, shared the resources that exist inside of our paid containers in other folks' paid containers. Y'all think that when you share my shit in Myisha's container or when y'all do it in mine, that like, one, we obviously shut it down, but two, we don't tell each other.
Oh yeah, we know all the
We
time.
know. We
And the
know.
ways in which we say don't triangulate and
Right.
well, this is such and such's approach and this is such and such's approach. I like to use the two. We thanks for the testimonial,
Cool. Right.
but that's can be harmful.
Right. It's also just disrespectful and annoying.
Hmm.
But the bigger picture of what I was going to say was for y'all, it's like, "Oh, I want my $5 back." But
Hmm.
to Maisha's point, for us, it's PayPal saying, "Oh, well, you've had X amount of disputes." They don't care if it's $5. They
They
don't
don't.
care what it was for. They are an algorithm, and we already know that algorithms have oppression built into them. It's white supremacy is coded into the algorithm. And so X amount of disputes or X amount of whatever's, right, quote unquote, negative actions on your account mean that your account gets suspended, mean that you can't have an account.
Mm-hmm.
And for folks like us that are constantly doing courses, like if I have a payment plan, a course that has a payment plan, and something happens to my PayPal or my Stripe account,
yeah,
and I get suspended or shut down, do you understand that that means that I can't take any of the following payments that are supposed to be reoccurring subscription model revenue?
Yep.
Like your $5 isn't just your $5, but y'all are so focused on what you want, how you want it, when you want it, because you're still so indoctrinated by whiteness.
Exactly.
And that is the biggest thing that I have really like noticed in the Caspering that has occurred. Because it's not the folks that are still committed. That's what I'm gonna call it.
You just called it Caspering. That's a meme.
Yes. It's not the folks that are still committed to the work. It's the folks who have gotten in so far, and then they realize that it's hard. They realize that it's uncomfortable. They realize that they're constantly going to be faced with the realities of the ways in which whiteness lives inside of them, and they reproduce it.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's hard. It's exhausting.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. But it is only your whiteness that allows you to be like, I'm just going to cancel or drop out of this class or stop showing up and like Homer Simpson fade into the bushes.
Exactly. I see that meme in real time. Because it's comfort. Like that's what the addiction is. Like I talk about the addiction to privilege, the addiction to supremacy, the addiction. It's all an addiction. When it gets uncomfortable, you can go back to what's not easy. You can go back into that behavior. It's a process. It takes years. Like you are unlearning. How many years of white supremacy racism? I say your age. So if you're 40, you're unlearning 40 years of who you've been socialized to become.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand that, like we actually expect it, right?
Yeah.
But I think for us, it's just the global expectation, and we're just like, whoa.
Yeah. And like, you know this because you've been doing this a long time too. Like there's always going to be a couple people that are like, ooh, child, I was not ready for this. I thought I wasn't ready. And sometimes they'll come talk to you and you talk it through and like, they just needed that moment of being able to like process it out loud.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, okay, well, here's a better option for you.
Right.
But when you're seeing it on a mass global level, and like we keep using $5, $10 because y'all don't understand, like, well, we use Podia, which is, I could say it's like Patreon, but better. But like Patreon, Podia, these subscription models literally start at like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, right? Dollars a month. We do that intentionally so that we can increase accessibility to folks.
Yep.
When they're doing this work. Because we understand people got bills, cool, whatever. But when in June you see, you have over 1,000 subscribers, and then you get to October and now you have like 620.
That says a lot.
That says a lot, especially because what y'all don't realize, I think people think that because we have so many followers or so many people in our programs, like we don't know names. We pay attention to everything.
Yep.
We know y'all's names.
Yep.
So when I see you dropping out of a $5 or $10 level subscription, but then you're on my Instagram or Myisha's Instagram or Check Your Privilege or Letty's Instagram, constantly consuming for free, constantly commenting in our DMs, picking our brain, asking us questions, what you're signaling is, oh, I still want to consume. I still want
to pay for it.
Exactly. I want all the things that you got to give me. So it's not like they're unhappy with the way that we do this work or, because if that's the case, cool, whatever. Maybe I'm not for you. I'm not for everybody. And that's fine. But then we still see y'all in the free spaces and then see y'all demanding more of us in the free space.
Yep. Then you were in the paid space.
Listen, I had somebody cancel and then actually show up in one of my comment sections asking me a whole long ass question about the nuance and third party voting, which I can absolutely talk about. One, I'm not doing it in a comment section because it's so nuanced. Like that's not the appropriate space.
Right.
But two, the way that they said it was like, she was a problem in general. I had to block her on everything. Like, was real, like, passive aggressive, kind of like, haha, I'm gonna get your ass. Like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I was like, I'm not doing this with you. But I responded to her and was like, this is not an appropriate conversation for the comment section. And if you have questions, here are some resources that you can go to. And like, her response was like, well, I've been paying you in your Podia for the last 5 months and da 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 da. And my response was, yeah, and you also canceled last week. And also, this is not what Instagram is for. Here's container,
Exactly.
here's boundaries, here's this, here's that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, y'all want what y'all, again, theme. You want what you want, when you want it, how you want it,
for the price you
for
want
the
it.
price that you want it at.
Mostly when it comes from Black and brown women, you want it for free, but yet you'll go, I'm not going to say this person's name, you'll go pay her $30,000 to talk about bias one time, and then $30,000 talk about bias one time, and it's a woman who's white, and it's a 1-year program, and you still come back because you realize you're really not doing the work. You've just wasted $30,000 of your savings during COVID-19. Say it.
She just raised her prices to $60,000 for a workshop.
Oh, she did?
I know this because people in the Bay, companies, tech companies out here are like, of course, what do? They go to a white person first. And obviously us being out here, right? Like, we got friends that work for these companies and they're like, girl. So obviously they're on the inside like, no, do not hire her, hire.
And they keep hiring her.
Right? Like, hire this person, that person, all these folks of color, Black folk, brown folk, indigenous folk.
Yep.
Right?
And if you're not her, then they put you through like 3 to 5 rounds of interviews that they think you're supposed to do for free to make sure you're qualified to teach it, as you say.
And then make you write a prospectus and a pitch. And I'm not doing all that.
You want a proposal?
Right. But all of that to say, that's how I know that she raised her prices to $60,000 for a workshop. And neither here nor there. The point is that y'all will pay that because it is attached to, the invoice is attached to whiteness, a white person.
Exactly.
But when it's Black, brown, indigenous folks, like, y'all can't pay $5.
Yeah. Your diversity and inclusion budget is only $200.
Girl, listen.
Okay.
But then expect it for free and then completely obliterate our boundaries and the ways in which we have said we will and won't engage in certain spaces.
Yep.
And expect us to show up and perform for you the way that you want us to.
Yep.
All of that is a functionality of whiteness.
Absolutely. And the one thing I want to go back to that you said is they like to look at our follower count and think that the follower count is it. Y'all don't know this, but only 1% of the followers will actually engage in buying products from us.
Yeah.
And then that 1%, they won't finish a course. Like, like we see, when Louise says we see everything. We see when you sign up. We see how many modules you go through. We see your last login. We see everything. So when you come and you ask for cancellation or you ask for something, I can actually log in and look and see, oh, you haven't engaged since George Floyd died.
Right.
I get it. I understand it.
Or we're 6 weeks in and you've been engaging a lot. I can see how many times you logged in. I can see what you've looked at. You've consumed everything.
Yeah.
But now it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't really care, especially when on websites it says terms and conditions, no refunds. I'm not refunding you. I'm not refunding you $75.
And then when we go back and forth in email with my assistant for the $75.
We have to pay those people to do their job.
And then you file a PayPal dispute anyway after we agree to new terms.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right. And the reason that we're bringing this up, people are going to listen and be like, I would never. Trust me, it's your sister, it's your uncle, it's your, whatever, it's your whoever. Like, this is a phenomena across the board that is rooted in white comfort, white complacency, and white entitlement. All weapons of whiteness, all functionalities of white supremacy and white dominance. Because I'm telling you right now that I know for a fact that y'all are not doing the exact same thing that you are to us, to these white folks. And what honestly does piss me off more, and I'm just going to say this makes me mad, I then watch some of these same folks Casper it up, right? Homer Simpson into the bushes from Black, brown, indigenous educators. And they flocking to white educators. because it's comfortable over there.
It's so comfortable and it's a safe container. There's no such thing as safe in this work. You're not safe when you walk out of your house and like tomorrow.
Right.
But it's safe and it's comfortable and it's palatable and it feels really good.
Exactly.
Because I feel a deep connection to you seeing me in my whiteness.
And that's the thing. We're not here. We keep saying this work is not about coddling whiteness. So if you're leaving spaces that are making you uncomfortable, it's because those are the spaces that are actually forcing you to face your whiteness. That is the space that is going to be transformational. When you jump ship, you abandon that so that you can flock to the comfort zone, to what's palatable. You have made the decision to prioritize your comfort and the perception of equity and diversity and inclusion and justice over the integrity of transformation that actually needs to occur.
Yep. And transformation isn't comfortable. It's not easy.
That's why they call it growing pains.
Exactly. That's why we say lean into the discomfort.
Mm-hmm. And this is why we inherently don't trust white people. Like, I'm gonna just say, I've said it 100,000 times. This is why, and white folks, I'm talking to y'all specifically right now, especially white female identifying folks.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have been in this work for like a month, 2 months, 3 months. And I've actually had people say to me, but I've been doing this work for a couple months and, you know, my Black friends or brown indigenous friends or folks at work still just like aren't, you know, opening up to me in the way that I thought that they would, or like, you know, they're not basically like, they haven't changed. They haven't like, said I'm an okay white person. That's because you spent 3 months. 3 months. And that what that means is that you haven't done anything yet to show improve. Your actions have not shown improved. And because what we know, like we said, regardless of whether it's on a mass global scale or an individual scale, whiteness will prioritize itself. Whiteness will lean back into its own comfort and its own safety, which inherently means abandoning anti-racism, which inherently means abandoning accomplishment.
Yep.
And when that happens, the only people that are going to continuously be harmed are folks of color, are Black
over and over again,
repeatedly,
time and time again.
So what is it? They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Exactly.
We're right. I'm not putting myself in that position.
No. What I will say is if you leave, and because I understand financial crises, all that, we get it. If you leave a container, we understand. And you can come back at any time. It's not saying to shame you, to silence you, come back. But what we want you to know is to really think about what you're doing and the impact it has on our livelihoods.
Mm-hmm. And beyond that, why are you doing it? Right? Like, you know your soul and spirit. I've had people cancel and then email and say, I want to be explicitly clear. This is everything I have learned from you. I just lost my job, and his husband and my husband. And Liz's actual email. I just lost my job. My husband was already furloughed, but they're like, he's about to be like out of work as well. And we have 2 kids. I have no idea what we're about to do. And I'm like, look, I've been poor and broke. No, I hate the word poor. I've been
you've been there.
I've been there.
Financially insecure.
I've been financially unstable at courses in my life. So I get it. $5 it means a lot. Right? So it's not that we're saying if that's you that we're like looking at you, we're like, you're a trash white person. Right? Like, that's not what we're saying.
We're capitalists now.
Right. No. 100% we get that. But what I know, because like I said, we are watching. We know when you leave a certain container and then you show up in a different one, and then we're watching you on, these white women's IGs talking about like, oh, I just signed up for her course. Well, I know that she charges 7 times more than I do. Mm-hmm. And not because she's better at her work than I am, but because I just don't believe in charging that particular price point. Or
because it's branded better.
Exactly.
That's for another day.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
The psychology of color.
Because people know that I don't care. I just don't. Y'all see my Instagram. I ain't got no rhyme or reason to that shit. I just changed my color because right now I'm feeling blue. Literally. I was like, ooh, cobalt blue is like really speaking to me.
Right. And then next month it'll be like
It'll
orange.
be, yeah, who knows? It'll be something else. People are like, what happened? I'm like, what do you mean? You're branding. That's not branded. I just like that color. I mean, technically, yes, it's branded, but you know what I'm saying? There's
I know
no
what you mean.
over here. But right, like when we see that happen, we understand the functionality behind it. So for y'all that are sitting here and are like, oh my God, is that me? Are they talking about me? Right? Like y'all know if we're talking about penguins and you're wondering if it's you, is because you got happy feet. You thought you were a duck, but maybe you're really a penguin. So it's time for you to sit and think and ask yourself, like, was I uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Was it really financial stress? Undue hardship? Cool, fine. We get it. I hope.
Or was it discomfort?
Yeah.
Or was it the fear of change, the fear of having to find new friends, the fear of you might actually end up getting a divorce, the fear of all of those consequences? There are women in our containers making those hard decisions, like I have to find new friends.
Yeah.
My husband wants to leave me because he supports Trump and I support Biden.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Literally on a call yesterday, one of the women in my container said, like, she literally was like, I think I have to divorce my husband. And I was like, cool, let's talk about it. Not cool, like that's a good thing. But it was like, all right, yeah, that is a potential consequence of really committing to this work and making this decision, because what ends up happening is you realize that folks in your life are not morally aligned with you. They're not values aligned with you. And we're not going to sit here and go back and forth over whether Black, brown, indigenous folks and all other marginalized identities deserve humanity. That's not, that's not something that we can agree to disagree on whether we're putting anchovies on pizza.
Exactly. But we can't disagree on Black Lives Matter.
No. No. Period.
That statement should just be like, I said what I said.
Right.
That's it.
We're done. Right. So we understand all of that. But if that is really the reason that you've leaned out of the work, that you've Homer Simpsoned into the bushes, right? If you like y'all might as well get your sheets out for Halloween if that's the case. Because you were never really committed to this work to begin with. You were really not about anti-racism. You were not about Black, brown, indigenous lives. You were really here to make sure that when people go back and look at your Instagram, or when they look at your what you were talking about and doing while the rest of the world was talking about and doing that you were on the right side of history.
You want to make sure that when you have a water cooler conversation about how to be an anti-racist or white fragility, you can have deep and meaningful conversations and show and prove that you're a good white person, participating in the good, bad binary.
Right. But that's really what it is. So unless you got anything else, I want to give them their call to action.
Nope. Give them their call to action.
Cool. So Myisha always frames it as niching down into your journey. I'm telling y'all to take it back, match that same June energy. I want y'all to match that great white awakening energy. When y'all were out here, and this is everyone, if you are white, I'm not talking to Black folk, everyone that doesn't identify as part of the Black African diaspora, everybody else. That means you, non-Black people of color. And white, ethnically, culturally, socioculturally Latinx folk. Let's go back to amplifying voices, and not the big voices that are social media influencer anti-racists. I'm talking about folks that are really in this work. I'm talking about folks that are still organizing. I'm talking about folks that have committed their lives, like myself, Myisha, Letty, to truly doing this work, that have been doing it since before it was hot and trending, since we've been doing it since we also had to, make sure that we had side hustles and other jobs just to support ourselves. When people ask me, they're like, oh my God, what? You used to be a trainer and like teach at gyms? Yeah, because anti-racism work wasn't paying me a livable wage because white folks did not find it important. White folks couldn't prioritize it. They couldn't find the money in their budget, always. But you found a new Tesla. Anyways, neither here nor there. So I want y'all to go back. I want y'all to find the educators that you have truly resonated with, that have taught you, like truly taught you something at any point, that have forced you into positions of discomfort, that have, been even if it was just a moment, were a part of your transformational process. And I want you to amplify those voices. I want you to amplify the voices of creatives of color, Black creatives. I want you to amplify Black artists. I want you to amplify Black businesses because y'all were about it in June, but y'all right back out here buying Lululemon, who is a trash ass company. Right? So niche down into that journey. Pick the educators that you are going to commit to entering into their containers and learning from. Amplify melanin. I think the hashtag was amplify melanated voices. Right? Go back to that hashtag. Start posting and sharing. And especially right now, I get it. It's cute and fun. Fly will vote, whatever. But there are also educators, specifically Black and Brown Indigenous educators, talking about voting. Amplify those voices.
Mm-hmm. And stop amplifying that the fly was Pence's only Black friend. That's racist.
Oh my God, I haven't seen that one.
Oh yeah, there's one that says that the fly is Pence's only Black friend. Don't send that tweet. Don't say it. Don't. If I see it on social media, I'm going to call you inappropriate. And there's also one where there is fly memes with Black women's voices saying, girl, don't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm thinking about it. And the fly lands on the head and it's, I'm going to do it. I did it. You know that one?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Girl, don't do it.
Yeah.
No,
it's a face in a fly.
No.
Yes. So don't participate in that. That's not what we're telling you to do.
Oh my God. I can't.
I've been seeing it all day. Like, really?
Yeah.
I just ruined the call to action because now that's the whole conversation.
Oh my God. My brain is like melting inside my skull. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand, but I hate it. Okay. Well, y'all got your call to action. I am now disturbed. Y'all will get, obviously, again, if you don't know Myisha, Google her, but y'all get the handles and, she's got another book coming out and we're doing what are we calling it? A conference? A digital conference?
A digital conference.
A digital conference that's going to come second week of November. Mm-hmm. Y'all will get links to all the things in the show notes. Make sure you're tapping in with Myisha, following her, following Check Your Privilege. Yeah, that's all I got.
That's it.
Thanks for being here, boo.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
I love it as usual.
I know, right? I love our conversations. All right. Until next time.
Peace.
That's all I got. Bye. And now for Ask Weaves, a segment where you get to pick my brain for free. All right. Hello. Hi, Charlotte. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
I'm very excited that you chose to join me.
I'm excited to be here.
All right. So let's tell the people what's on your heart, mind, soul. What question do you have?
What's on my mind? So I guess what's on my mind is, from everything I see on Instagram and Twitter and maybe through history, it seems to me that a lot of the time Black women seem to be picking up the burden of, at the moment, it's educating, right? It seems to me, I'm not saying there's no Black men doing any educating, that would be false. But it just seems to me that more than ever, I'm seeing lots of Black women picking up this burden. And also I feel like, Black women are supporting each other. And when I say Black women, I mean, I'm sure just as much Black trans women are doing as much work as well. But kind of wondered how you feel about that.
Yeah. So this is actually a conversation that happens in a lot of different circles a lot of the time. Right. So the reality is that Black women have always done most of the work of society, and not because, they're better equipped or they're superheroes. I mean, I think that they are, but just because of magic. Right. But no, for no other reason than society. That's how our society has literally structured it. Right. If we look at the ways in which whiteness has carved out spaces for very particular social identities, or carved out rather particular spaces for social identities, Black women have, and femmes, right? So for those that might be new to me, I am not the person that, when I say women, I'm excluding trans women. I think trans women are women, and that's right. Like, that's not my fucking business. But it's always been like that, right? Like, how often do we see tweets from white women that are like, oh, Black women are going to save us all? Or, oh, I saw one that was so terrible for so many reasons. And it was like, Black women are my spirit animal. Like, let's just talk about all the levels of the fuckery in that one, right? Actually, we don't have enough time. But let's just say, one, stop using the word spirit animal if you are not an indigenous tribe and you actually from an indigenous tribe and know what it actually means. And no, Black women are not, right? They're not your spirit guide. They're not your savior. But that is how both society has allowed them to engage, right? Created space for them to engage, expected them to engage, and how the media has consistently portrayed them. So that's the first thing.
Oh, sorry.
No.
What's the next thing?
The next thing is, there's also just the reality that there's like, you'll hear a lot of folks say a lot of times, like, no one's coming to save us but us. Right? And so the reality is that the other reason it looks like, right, Black women and femme are doing all of the labor is because they are. Is really, truly, genuinely because they are, right? The Black Panther Party was made up of 2/3 women. That's not a story that anybody talks about or anybody tells.
Yeah. I only learned recently that the Black Lives Matter movement was started by women. I didn't even realize
3 women. Again.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And for me, that was kind of invisible.
Yeah. And intentionally so.
Right. Okay. So that leads me into another interesting question. So you said the only people who are going to save us is us, or me is me. When this, when this started to happen, after George Floyd, and my daughter and her partner were living with us because of lockdown in England, and her partner said to me, a male partner said to me, "Oh, white women are uniquely placed to help in this fight because you have been oppressed and you're oppressors, right? So you have this unique perspective."
Yeah.
And I confess that for a brief few weeks, the sort of, what's the term? The savior in me was kind of chuffed about this. And then I started to think, this is just a really weird thing, because I've just been told, I love him to pieces, I'll tell you, but just been told by a white male that it's my job now to do this, but I'm not the person with all the power, right? So nor in my opinion are Black women the people with all the power. Seems to me white men are the people who have the power to affect the change. So the job falls to people without the power. Is that right? How does that work for you?
So this is a slightly complex answer in that there are so many, it's very multifaceted, it's multi-pronged. So the first one is like, my first response to him would say, that's a lovely sentiment. But if that were actually happening, then Kimberly Crenshaw would not have had to push for the concept of intersectionality for white women to actually understand that, right? I've been quoted many times saying that white women will always betray female liberation in order to protect their white privilege. Because yes, it is true, right? Due to the patriarchy and the power dynamic between the gender, it rooted in the gender binary. Women are just all women are marginalized in ways that men are not. And then, right, if you dare to fall outside of the gender binary, then you are even further oppressed.
Right.
And yet that's not what's happening, because whiteness and white privilege is, one, the epicenter of all forms of privilege, and truly is the root and crux and fabric of our global society. And so the first thing is, that's why, right, we don't see a lot of white women. That's why 53% of white women voted for Trump, right? The second thing to note is that it's actually everybody's job. It's absolutely everybody's job. Period.
Right.
Every single person. Because we, even those of us that are marginalized, we hold power in different ways, right? And so right now we're talking about racism, but for example, as a cisgendered woman, it is my responsibility to fight for transgender, non-binary, right? Or gender queer folks. That's my responsibility because I hold power in a way that they don't. And so it is all of our responsibilities to fight. Now, the distinction and the nuance is that our roles are different. Our roles are simply different, right? So and rightfully so, we're seeing folks of color and specifically Black folks at the forefront of movements, because we should be amplifying the voices of those that are actually closest to the pain. But that doesn't mean that everyone doesn't have a unique role.
Right.
And quite frankly, white men, this is like my call into white men, of anyone, absolutely cisgendered white men should be leading this charge. Because they are, by definition, the epicenter of privilege.
Yeah.
And so to sit back and say, oh, well, I don't have to do it because I'm not marginalized is by definition privilege.
Right. So a lot of time white women will say to you, what can I do? Right. So that's something I see on Check Your Privilege all the time.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm still at the point of reading book after book and trying to get different perspectives, trying to question what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, maybe one way in which what my daughter's partner said might be more true is that I'm perhaps closer to more white men than many black people generally.
Correct. Yes.
So, or might have their ear a bit more. So, I mean, I guess you might say, well, one thing that might fall to white women could be pushing our voices to push their voices, something along those lines.
Absolutely. Because we know historically, right? We have erasure, we have silencing, sometimes outright violence, when folks of color or folks that are marginalized try to use their voices and move forward the needle of equity so that their humanity can be honored. They're not listened to. And inherently, anytime anyone who's oppressed dares to name their oppression, those that have privilege in opposition to that identity take it as a personal attack. And so it is, what'd you say?
I was going to say, I know, because it does feel like that sometimes, but I'm trying my best not to take it as a personal attack.
Yeah, right? Because we're not saying, well, Charlotte, you're a trash human simply because you're white, right?
What we're saying
is, what we're really saying is, Charlotte, you benefit from the privilege of holding white identity.
Yeah.
And you are uniquely positioned to have conversations with other white folks. But this is where, again, I would be remiss if I didn't say it, this is where then whiteness gets in its own way, because then what ends up happening, and we see this battle a lot, is then white women specifically take it upon themselves to become the educators, to center themselves, to profit off of the education. You cannot be the poison and the antidote, but what you can do, you can have conversations. You can name things, right? It's like at the airport, see something, say something. When you see something, you say something, and then you point them in the direction of educators. You set boundaries with folks who say things that are overtly racist and are committed to misunderstanding and committed to ego and pride and privilege. Hey, you know what? You can't have those conversations around me. If you're incapable of hearing me or listening or learning and doing better, then I have to establish a boundary. That is not acceptable.
Can I ask you another question?
Please.
So it's specifically around being an educator, because my job is, I am an educator at university. And within a course that I teach feminism.
Okay.
For a week or so. That's just a small part of a bigger course.
Yeah.
So when I took on this course, I thought, how am I going to teach it? Well, I'm going to teach from an intersectional perspective, because I don't think we should do feminism from any other perspective.
Right.
And then, so obviously some of the reading that I'm doing now is rereading some of the stuff that I've done before, and I had come across Crenshaw in an academic perspective, and Patricia Hills Collins and Evelyn Lord, and in fact, in a different, I'm getting a bit over the top here, but I discovered the book This Bridge Called My Back, and read it, but that was harder to teach, really.
Yeah.
It gets more abstract, especially for me, not necessarily always understanding the perspectives.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what I wanted to say is that I both feel it's my duty to teach feminism from that intersectional perspective, and then I have this anxiety, oh crap, I'm a white woman. And I actually I've taught it a few years now, I always stand up and I say, because I have people of all colours in my class, and I just say, I'm a white woman stood up here and I'm about to tell you about a black female perspective.
Yeah.
It's a bit messed up. We only have one other female professor at the moment who could teach that, who is a person of colour. But she's busy doing something else, actually. She's busy teaching her
courses.
Right, exactly. And I said, and that's only slightly weirder than the fact that we also have, slightly less weird rather, than the fact that we also have men teaching feminism at different years, right? So, I totally get your point. Like, why should a white woman be teaching this topic? But by the same token, I kind of look around and see in universities up and down the country, men teaching feminism. We need more Black professors. There's no doubt about that, right? That's the easiest answer.
Right.
But I also love teaching it. I love teaching it because it taught me so much. And I learned so much from Black girls who'd come up to me afterwards and just tell me about their experiences. And I think had I not taught that, I wouldn't have their perspectives, and I wouldn't, they're very generous with their experiences. And I also, I have a long way to go before I get my curriculum anything like the way it ought to be, because I was taught a very, very white kind of...
Well, we all are, Charlotte. That is literally academia, white-centered.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing to note here is, and this is where the journey of anti-racism is super crucial in terms of how you're doing it. So my answer is twofold, or my reflection back to you is twofold. The first is, a lot of folks are in the process of I'm consuming the podcast and the Instagram accounts and the books and all of those things. And that's wonderful. But that's, as an educator, right, there's a difference between knowledge or education and information and applied knowledge and understanding how to apply that knowledge. And so what we're seeing right now during the Great White Awakening is this phenomena of folks consuming knowledge, consuming information with no understanding of how to apply it, because they themselves haven't entered into courses that are intentionally created to transform the way that they engage society from as a white person. And so that is, a note that I have to make, because obviously people are listening. So the books, reading the books and listening to the podcast and all of that, that's great. But are you committed to truly learning, right? So it's like in science, you can learn all the science, but if you don't go to lab, you're not going to know, right? Like what good is chemistry if you haven't learned how to mix and master and use beakers and put it over the flame, like just the right temperature, right? You have to know how to apply it.
Yeah.
So it does actually require a further step. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we're not saying, or I shouldn't say I'm not saying, Charlotte, don't ever dare use Black, brown, indigenous, trans, whatever, immigrant perspectives in academics work.
Right. I want to use more.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want more of that brought into mainstream academia. But it's how we're doing the thing. So when we say you can't position yourself as the educator, what we're saying is don't become a Tim Wise or a Robin DiAngelo.
Okay.
Don't charge $30,000 specifically for a 3-hour, any amount of money. Don't charge $3 specifically to center yourself as the end all be all of the education, specifically in anti-racism.
Yeah.
That is distinctly different than saying we're talking about feminism. And it is my responsibility as your educator, who now knows better, shout out Dr. Maya Angelou, right, to do better. I know that the way that we currently teach feminism is inherently white-centered and absolutely ignores a larger socio-cultural, political context. And in order to truly do justice to feminism and female liberation and the female liberation movement, we have to introduce Crenshaw. We have to introduce Lord. There are so many phenomenal academics, right? Women of color, of all races, that have spoken to, right, what we now call intersectionality, that should be immersed in those lessons. And so I say, yes, do more of that, right? Because you're not saying, well, I have created this concept called intersectionality, and I would really like us to all look at it, right? You're saying, let me introduce you to Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to her. I'm going to introduce you to this amazing concept. Now let's dissect it. Let's talk about it. Let's have the conversation as to why whiteness has co-opted the female liberation movement. Why whiteness has co-opted even like, the gender binary in general, what purpose that serves, how all of these other BIPoC educators and academics who are historically not taught and ignored, or vilified or erased are actually right.
And, a delight to read and listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
They read her paper, which is quite tough.
It is.
But I say, if you want a break, go and watch her on her TED Talk.
Yeah.
There's other ways of engaging as well.
I actually, so one of the weeks in one of my courses is specifically on intersectionality. And I literally provide her original paper and I say the exact same thing. You are going to start reading. And if you're not an academic that nerds out probably in the way that you and I do, Charlotte, then here's her TED Talk. Here's interviews that she's done where she synthesized it, right? Here's a bunch of other resources, but they're all Kimberly Crenshaw talking.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how you can do that. And also, and honor the original academic and honor her talking about not only the Black experience, but the experience of women of color in the movement for, female liberation and feminism.
That's very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed this.
Good. Yay. That was the point. I'm like, I want to be able to like teach and tell people things, but it's so much more fun as a chat.
It is really nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there anything else on your spirit, Charlotte? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot.
One could sometimes not stop. And perhaps, but I mean, it's really cool.
What I will also say is, have you seen my Instagram video called All the World's a Stage?
No.
Okay. So if you go to Instagram,
is it on
Instagram?
Yeah,
yes.
I do.
Okay, perfect. So because that's how you made this appointment.
Yeah,
okay. So if you go to Instagram, I have one single highlight in my Instagram. And if you click through it, it's all of the videos that are like most asked about.
Right.
And it is a full almost hour lecture on how to show up, centering the most marginalized, basically the answer to what can I do and how do I do it? Yeah. So I would also love for you to watch that to be able to get like tons and tons of clarity around how to navigate all of this in a way that doesn't limit your own humanity and your ability to like be great as an educator and a human, and simply creates more space, right? Because our goal is not to just have a container and trade one race for another. Our goal is to stretch the container so that everybody can be included. So I think that'll be really helpful for you as well.
I will have a look.
Fantastic. Perfect. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I appreciate it. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Rate, review, subscribe, like, share this podcast with all of your peoples. Follow me on Instagram. And you can always join me in community over at Podia. Until next time.